Hi, welcome. This is Barry Rose, and welcome to our kind of sneak preview, which is actually the first lesson of my foundation class in Vedic Astrology. Very honored to have you all here today. I need to do a sound check. I'm gonna kind of unmute somebody who I know and ask them if they can hear me, or anybody who knows go to webinar. Some people are on their phone, so they may not be able to speak, but Deanna, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Oh.
Great. Okay. So what I usually do, I tend to do more of a kind of a lecture during these first classes. In future classes, I do a lot more interaction. I will stop at different points to kind of take questions. I do encourage questions, and the whole value of a live class is that we can have questions, and the whole purpose of having a live teacher is that you can have questions. So we'll be doing that. If you're not too familiar with GoToWebinar, at some point I will I'm going to keep you muted because sometimes people have noise going on in the background, and it leads into the recording. But at some point I'll make your mics available, and if you have a question, your mics will turn from red to green, and you can click on them, and when your mic is green, you can speak and ask a question. So that's what we'll do the format. I probably won't go a full 2 hours. I often will do 2-hour classes, but I'll probably do about an hour and a half today, and just to lighten it up. I usually start my classes with some traditional Vedic chanting, and I have the other slideshow up, so I need to go to the first slideshow. Here's my contact information. If you need to email me about the classes or have any questions, it's barry@appliedvedicastrology.com. The best extension actually to reach me at is 2984. And I do respond on Skype and Facebook. So I'm very reachable if you need to contact me. So I start with some traditional Vedic chanting, and basically it settles the mind down, and so you can just kind of, it's thought to kind of, if you have some shoes, you can slip them off. It's kind of thought to traditionally slip your shoes off during kind of traditional chanting, kind of to honor things. So I'm going to start with some Vedic chanting. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprapa Nirvigyam Kurame Deva Sarvakarishu Sarvada Jnanamulam Guru Murti Pujamulam Guru Padam Vanchamulam Guru Vakyam Mokshamulam Guru Kripa Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavahai Tejasvina Vatitamastu Madhavishai Vahai Om Shanti 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 Om Aditaye Samaye Mangalai Buddhaye Cha Guru Shukra Shanibhascha Rahave Ketave Namaha. In honoring the great teachers, Lord Krishna, Goddess Saraswati, Vedavyasa, cognizer of the Vedas, and going back to my holy tradition of masters, going back to Brahmananda Saraswati. And I stand on the shoulders of many great teachers who have taught me over the years, including Sanjay Rath, Camilla Sutton, Bill Levesey, although there are many others. Quick shameless plug here. Most of you know my book, Finding Your Blind Spots. A lot of great knowledge in there. For those of you taking the class, I usually I have really good articles in all my books. I have 3 books. I will give you copies of my books if you sign up for the class, because it helps you read ahead before I go over material. So that's one of the bonuses of taking the classes. You don't. So the class does start. Actually, the early bird is 3:25, but the class does start on. We'll be running on Sundays. The sneak preview is today. We're running on Sunday, September 8th at 3 p.m. Central Time. We'll be running 15 weeks, and there will be a part 2 for those of you who want to continue. So I can go over the curriculum later, but what's happened is I've been teaching more advanced classes on Vedic astrology for a number of years. I used to teach foundation classes many years ago, and then now I have this whole set of kind of more advanced classes for people to plug into, but I don't have a new series of foundation classes. So this fall and this winter, I'm doing a part 1 and a part 2, so that I have those foundation classes in place, and then you can continue on with very specific subjects. Because I have a class on nakshatras, I have a class on career, I have a class on relationship, I have very specific classes on transits and dashas and things like that. But this first, so the idea is to put together 30 weeks of classes that are kind of foundations for Vedic astrology. So there will be a part 2 to follow this for those of you who want to study in more detail. I will be speaking at the Sedona Vedic Astrology Conference, November 22nd to 25th. The topic I'm speaking on is blind spots to moksha. And I will be, so if you're going there, please look me up. And I will be doing a retreat in Boone, North Carolina next May. That has been changed recently. Okay, so let's start with today's material. Okay, so the key question to ask, so the purpose of this class is like, I'm hoping to go into a lot of why astrology, and I'm also going to teach you some basics of how to look at a chart, and I'm also going to give you kind of a sample from one of the lessons so that you have some idea of what we're going to do. My goal with this class is, it is for people who know absolutely no astrology, but for those of you who know my classes, I teach in such depth that even if you have a background in Vedic astrology, you're going to learn a lot of new things, because my goal is to kind of create a new way of synthesizing material, to create a new kind of archetypal code, so that when you're looking at something, you can draw on keywords and phrases. So I'm trying to create a new system for learning astrology easier, and that's part of the goal of this class. So I'm not just going to kind of teach you stuff that's in a book. I'm going to try to kind of teach you new ways of looking at things. So why study Vedic astrology? And of course, it answers kind of a few questions. Why am I here? Why am I suffering? How do I get out of suffering? How can I live a better life? And it's about knowing ourselves, understanding our patterns. I don't like to see Vedic astrology as fortune telling, and it sometimes moves in that direction. People do call me, when am I going to get a job? When am I going to get married? And Vedic astrology can do that, and I know how to do that. I can teach you how to do that in my additional classes. But my goal is always to kind of bring Vedic astrology to a more spiritual level. Vedic astrology, for some people, I have some new Western astrologers who are wanting to study Vedic astrology. And just quickly, Vedic astrology is the oldest form of astrology. It's over 10,000 years old. It's better at timing and prediction than Western astrology. I love Western astrology because of its psychological orientation. But for those of you who have friends who have been studying Vedic, you know that Western astrology sometimes isn't that good at prediction, and Vedic is much better. And Vedic astrology is very specific. It's like reading strands of DNA when we get into these subdivisional charts. So you can see very, very, very specific patterns, and it's quite amazing. It really is like reading strands of DNA. And the difference, of course, between Vedic and Western is the sun really goes into Aries astronomically April 13th to 14th, and not March 21st. So it's more scientific. 20,000 years ago, this sun went into Aries on March 21st. There's a value in the tropical zodiac, and there's a system for it, and I honor all the Western astrologers, but Vedic is a little bit deeper and richer and more scientifically based. So the purpose of astrology is often that it helps us see our hidden personality flaws and to help change them. And sometimes they're kind of hidden from view. That's what my book is about, finding your blind spots. The planets, impact our thoughts and emotions. And if we understand what's happening, we don't have to buy into the energy. Sometimes it's the real value of Vedic astrology is if and I mean, I've just been watching the stars, the planets for 30 years now, and so I always know what's going on. And sometimes we get gripped by something that's going on, and we start beating ourselves up, or we make ourselves feel bad because we're angry, or we got into a fight, or something like that. And when you understand, maybe Mars is doing something, or Saturn's doing something, it kind of can release the mind from that self-blame. So Vedic astrology should kind of help you observe the formation of our thoughts and catch our negative tendencies before they manifest. And I wake up in the morning sometimes on these difficult astrological days, and I have all this mess going through my head. And by the time I do my spiritual practice, 98% of it's gone. And then if I know what's going on in the stars, then I can kind of just say, oh, Saturn, you can go now. And so it helps us kind of get a handle on what's going on. Astrology is never meant to strike fear into our hearts. I mean, there's some astrologers who sometimes just like to predict the end of the world, and this war is going to break out and stuff like that. I mean, that was never its intention. It was never intention to create fear. Jyotish means light, and that's the light of knowledge. And it should free us from the grip of darkness and thoughts and emotions. So it's a very spiritual technique, and most spiritual people are attracted to my work because it's about freeing the mind and freeing us from the grip of the planets. Hopefully this course will help you do that. I like to think that astrology should reveal the puppeteer's play of strings tugging at our emotions and psychology. What really happens is that the planets sometimes start on the level of the emotions and the psychology, and then maybe something more extreme manifests on a physical level in the body, or in the environment. But usually, it's always starting on the emotional and the psychological level. And if we know what's going on, we can kind of cut the puppeteer's strings the planets are pulling our strings, they're pulling our emotions and our psychology, and that can free us up so that we're not as gripped. And that's the whole point of astrology. We want to see the smoke and mirrors that's going on. And the more we meditate, the more we do spiritual practice, the less we're kind of gripped by the intensity of what's going on in the stars. So we have to use astrology kind of as spiritual technique. Paramahansa Yogananda said, we have to win the spiritual battle, the psychological battle, and the astrology kind of helps us win that battle. My goal in this course is that, to create kind of a Zen moment of observation that enlightens you to see, who you really are. You're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your ego. I mean, for those of you who read Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, he's always reminding us that 99% of our thoughts are garbage, and the few creative ideas that we have that are key, we have an aha experience at those, but most of the time just a lot of garbage coming out. And when we know the planets are kind of generating that garbage, we can get a better handle on it. And we're not going to be as gripped. I kind of see it, as a gyana technique. Gyana is one of the philosophies in Vedic philosophy, which kind of helps us through intellectual experience, intellectual awareness, and combining that with our experience to see what's going on. We become observers of the whole key with becoming free of the grip of the mind is that we have to become observers of our mind. We have to understand, oh, there goes Saturn again. He's playing that game, that fear game. Oh, there goes Saturn again with that victimization pattern. I don't really need to go there anymore. See, if you meditate enough and you know a little bit of astrology, then you kind of can start breaking these patterns and you're not gripped. And that's the whole purpose of my work. And the whole point is that we have to learn to be kinder to ourselves and not beat ourselves up, because what happens is these patterns come up, we make mistakes, then we start beating ourselves up, and that goes into a negative spiral. And you can just kind of say, okay, Saturn, you can go now. We've played this game for 30 years. And when I was first studying astrology about 30 years ago, I started becoming aware of that. I had intense fear from Saturn going on. I had a Sati-Sat going on over my moon, and I suddenly kind of started talking to Saturn. I say, Saturn, you can go now. I understand what's going on here. You can go. We don't have to play this game. And I felt this immense freedom. We're not really supposed to be victims of the planets. They're here to teach us to be more self-aware and to become liberated. So there's this whole spiritual dimension to astrology. And we need to use astrology to become liberated and to become free. My friend Juliana Swanson had this beautiful quote about astrology. She said, when we wake up, we realize we are multidimensional, and at any given time, there are many possibilities. There are unlimited possibilities seen in the fact that every astrological combination is good for something and bad for something, and has a higher versus a lower expression depending on the consciousness of the person. Divinity and consciousness reside within us. Planets reside within that very consciousness. So we actually are, the planets are not really separate from us. We are the planets. We can actually, my spiritual teacher used to say, we can command the planets. So we shouldn't be victimized. And we actually have to learn that even these difficult combinations like we have now, like Saturn with Ketu, they are teaching us something, and there is a bright side to everything that we learn. So we have to learn how to translate. I know some astrologers get very negative and very dark, and there's always a kind of, even when these difficult combinations are happening, they're always trying to teach us something very powerful, and there's always some beauty in those lessons. So we need to really kind of learn those. I kind of like to think of astrology as kind of giving us schools of karma. When we decide to become a victim of the planets, we lessen our inherent greatness. And again, as I said, my spiritual teachers always found us saying that we should command the planets and not be a victim of them. But to do that, because we are divine, and the planets are really, they do bring back our karma, but we can, as our soul grows, we can become much stronger and not be a victim. And there's wisdom everywhere that in the planets, even in these deep afflictions in our chart. We have to understand that sometimes there's a school that we're in, and for example, if you're born with a weak Saturn governs, everybody fears Saturn, but Saturn governs responsibility and hard work, and it likes meditation, it likes exercise. If we're not, if we have a weak Saturn in our chart and we're not a responsible person, we're lazy about working, and we're lazy about exercising, and we're lazy about meditating, then we're going to get a bunch of hard Saturn lessons. But if we learn the school of Saturn and learn those lessons, we can change that energy, and we don't have to be a victim of Saturn. So all these planets, if they're weak in your chart, they're trying to teach you something. Like I said, if you're born with a weak Mars, the archetypal lesson is learning, service, and courage. If you're born with a weak Venus, you're not good at relationships, so you need to learn how to cooperate. You have to learn how to have fun with song and dance and celebration. If you're born with a weak Saturn, I talked about that one already. You learn how to be disciplined with spiritual practice. If you're born with a weak Sun, then you have to grow in leadership and confidence. And so, more become aware. The interesting thing is that we're not here. I have this in a later slide. We're actually not here to work on our strong planets. Those are our gifts and our talents. Those are the gifts that we give to other people. We're actually here to work on our weaker planets, and we tend to kind of gravitate toward our strong planets because it strokes our ego. Even myself, I have a gift with the astrology. I have a gift as a teacher. I spend a lot of time doing that because I love doing it. It energizes me, and it makes me feel good. My Venus actually is kind of afflicted. I'm an incredible poet and an artist, and yet I don't do it very much because it's blocked by Saturn. It's a really huge block, and I actually need to kind of spend more time, painting and writing poetry and things like that, rather, because those are things that need to be changed in my chart. So we have to work on the things that are difficult in our chart. I tend to favor a psychological approach to teaching astrology. I mean, there are classes, and we, in my advanced classes, we can teach predictions about when you're going to get married and when money's going to come to you and when, your career is going to get an advancement. And people always want to know that stuff. But to me, astrology is always about psychology and spirituality. And we need to kind of learn to, one of my spiritual teachers was very fond of saying, mud is endless. Now, I don't like to go into the mud in astrology. I mean, you can kind of, you can start talking about, your patterns, and, you can be in psychoanalysis for 15 years and nothing will change. And one of my teachers, Alina Jaffe, was very fond of saying that if you go to the lake at dawn before the water is stirred up, and you can walk in, you can kind of see the bottom of the lake. You can see all the fishes and at the bottom of the lake. But as you walk into the lake, you start stirring up the mud, and then you can't see the fishes, you can't see the bottom. And he always was fond of saying mud is endless. You could get a water filtration plant and hook it up to the lake, but you'll never get all the water out of the lake. And you'll never get all the mud out of the lake because mud is kind of endless. And our accumulated karma, our faults are kind of endless. Sometimes in a moment of grace, we can see to the bottom of the pond. We can transcend. We can get enlightened through the grace of a master. But I don't know if we can ever get rid of all the mud. And I think it's useful to understand our patterns and to work on them. But I don't know if I kind of think it's kind of endless. So the key is that we I talked about this already. We have to work on the things that maybe are difficult for us. The strong planets are our gifts. The weak planets are there to work on. And it's like the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, one of my favorite movies, where you just have to, he keeps waking up in this nightmare because he's not good about being kind to people. He's not good about being in relationship. And eventually, he goes through, 50 lifetimes in that movie until he gets it and becomes a wonderful person. And I think our lives are like that. We just have to learn how to be good, how to be kind, how to be helpful to people, how to be of service. And the planets all have kind of both a positive and a negative side. Highest aspect of Mars is service, and service to mankind. When we think of the military service, their service to their country. And Mars is weak. People, get too aggressive. They get angry. They get kind of predatory in relationship. So, we always have to understand we come in with these certain patterns, and we have to kind of work on them and move them to their highest archetypal value. So we have to kind of learn the dark side and the light side of everything, and they're both always there. Again, I don't want, with astrology, I feel like we shouldn't be a victim. We have to become aware of our patterns. We have to shift our awareness so we don't repeat them and that we don't get gripped by them. Now, what happens usually, sometimes you go through these foggy periods and you're just not clear what's going on. Rahu can do that. We just taught a 21-week class on Rahu. And Rahu creates kind of fog and confusion. And in the middle of a Rahu period, you just can't see what you're doing wrong or what kind of mistakes you're making. And sometimes you need mantras and pujas to help free the mind of that fog. And when that happens with the healing, you can make the change that you need to happen. I mean, sometimes people spend their life waiting for the tailwinds to come. I'm going to be happy when my Jupiter period comes. I'm going to be happy when my Venus period comes. And again, Jupiter period comes, and like it may feel better, but certain other challenges will come up. I mean, life is always mixed. Sometimes relationships work, sometimes health works, sometimes work works, sometimes money works, and sometimes those don't work. But there's always kind of a mixture, and so, but we can't live our life in the future waiting for, I'll be happy when, in the future. We have to kind of change and transform in the present. I'm not going to go. I talked about this kind of Groundhog Day thing already. You just don't want to get trapped in the nightmare of repeating your mistakes. Astrology should help you become aware of them so you move forward and you make changes. But you have to make the changes yourself. I mean, a lot of people, if you're not on the spiritual path, then maybe you are victimized more and you feel like you can't change your karma. But if you are in the spiritual path, you meditate, you're aware of your patterns, you can change things and become a better person. And that's what we're here to do, like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. Okay, so I'm going to quickly pause here. I'm going to, if anybody has a quick question, I'm unmuting your mics, and it means you should be able to click on them and ask a quick question. This section I just had was more kind of philosophical, spiritual foundation material, so it's not very specific. You probably don't have questions, but anybody have a quick question? Okay, okay, so there's three types of karma, and sometimes you can see the type of karma in your chart. Usually karma is kind of unfathomable. It's called Arruda karma, which means action that has already begun manifesting. It's kind of like if you miss the freeway exit, you kind of have to keep going until you get to the next freeway exit, because you're kind of stuck. And sometimes we're in the middle of something, and Prarabdha karma is harder to change because it's kind of unfolded already, and we're kind of in the middle of it, and it takes a little bit more work to kind of fix. Sanchita karma is kind of all the gathered karma in our life that we've brought in from all the previous lifetimes. It all doesn't manifest in this lifetime. There's a chart in Vedic astrology called the D60 chart, the Shashtyamsha, which is a very powerful chart that you can study with me in some of the advanced classes, which kind of shows all our stored karma in this one chart and the kind of the patterns that we keep repeating. And it's very kind of powerful to kind of do work on that. And then we have Agami karma, which is the karma which is not come. Now, Jyotish can predict the future and the karma that has not yet come, and you can make changes in your life so that it doesn't have to sprout. And traditionally, it's thought that if you want to change the future, you start doing mantras and yagas before the karmic period is supposed to start. So one of my wonderful teachers, Camilla Sutton, was in India, and she set up a yaga for all her students for the Saturn Ketu mess that's going on now, where everybody's kind of things fall apart and there's all these kind of delays and things like that. And the pundits started doing the remedy on a daily basis, like in early March, even before Ketu had gone into Sagittarius, because you start the remedy before stuff has sprouted. And so, Vedic astrology can be used in that way. And again, spiritual practice always is the best way of kind of freeing us. As I said, astrology is not fortune telling. I mentioned this already. It's more about awareness, and it's a spiritual technique for freeing us from the grip of what's going on, and helps us reveal our life purpose and why we're here on the planet. Those of you who are more seasoned, I am teaching a class starting September 7th called Finding Your Purpose, and it involves Jaimini astrology. And Jaimini astrology is very soul-based astrology, and you can see the purpose of the soul in this incarnation, and you can see what the soul's supposed to do in this incarnation. It's all very revealed in these Jaimini charts. Maharishi Jaimini was either a student or the son of Parashara, the great Vedic seer, and he wrote a commentary on Parashara. Parashara talked about all the things that are in Jaimini astrology, but sometimes he didn't flesh them out clearly. In those days they didn't have videotapes to record Parashara's lectures, so they would write a rhymed sutra so that everybody could remember a 2-hour lecture. And you have all these sutras, and people would memorize the sutras, and that was a way of kind of continuing these oral traditions of astrology. And then, you had to have a teacher kind of flesh out the sutra and give you the 2-hour lecture. And so there's a bunch of material in Parashara about the Jaimini expounded on in his book, the Upadasha Sutras. And anyway, I'm teaching a class on that, and it's very fascinating. For those of you who are interested, that is coming up the day before this class starts, but and it will be available later too. So I want to, one of the things I need to do is I have to kind of teach you how to run charts and what the difference is between the northern and southern styles. And for those of you, my favorite Jyotish program software is called Sri Jyoti Star that Andrew Foss put together. That's the program that I use. It's probably over $300. It may not be in your budget, but you can download a very good program from the internet called Jagannatha Hora. It's actually a very, 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 very good free program. And for those of you starting out, you can use that program. Now, I have started. I'm going to just pull up my chart here. This is the northern. This is the southern style of a chart, and I'll explain what everything is here in a minute. And to run a chart, you need accurate. You need obviously the birth date and the birth time. And so, if you want to become astrologers, you have to kind of make sure clients give you accurate birth times from their baby book or their birth certificate, and then there are techniques we can learn eventually to rectify them. Of course, you need the city. Sometimes people in Europe will give you a time like May 6th, and they'll give you they'll give you 6/5, because in Europe they give the date first and the month later. So you always have to clarify how you're getting the date when you're in a chart. And then okay, so here's my chart. Now, this is the southern style of India, and I use the northern style of charts. I'll show that one to you, and I'll teach it to you. You should know both. I've used the southern style for 25 years, and I just switched this year. I learned both of them at the beginning, which is I think everybody should learn both of them. Sometimes you buy a book and they've got one style and not the other. But in the northern style and in the southern style, the signs are fixed. So you can see here Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. So the signs in the southern style are always fixed. So Sagittarius is always in the lower left corner, and Pisces is always in the upper left corner, and Gemini, which is another dual sign, is always in the top right corner. And so it goes like that. And so this is called kind of a fixed sign chart. And the line means, the ascendant. That's the line coming up on the eastern horizon when you were born. If somebody looked out at the horizon, when you were born, the sun of Scorpio was rising on the eastern horizon, and specifically a specific constellation. And then each sign of the zodiac is about 2 hours. So the rising sun changes about every 2 hours, and that will vary whether it's a summer birth or a winter birth. Obviously, things have shorter days and shorter nights, and longer nights in the winter. So the times of the and the sizes of the signs may vary, but on average they're about 2 hours. And then in my case, I'm Scorpio rising. I was born at 7 degrees, and that means something. We'll teach you what each degree means something in Vedic astrology. And then there are constellations, fixed constellations connected to each sign of the zodiac. It's something I don't do in the first class, but I will cover it in the winter class a little bit. And so this is kind of clearly telling you my moon is here in the rising sign becomes what's known as the first house of the zodiac, which represents the self, the personality, your physical body. And then as you rotate, I have Rahu in the second house, which is connected to family and money and food, and Rahu is connected to foreign things, and so I'm kind of an outsider in my family. I've got Venus in the third house, in Capricorn here, Mercury in the fourth house here. And in this program, the way I have it set up, it's telling you this is the fourth house. And I've got Sun in the fifth house, Mars in the sixth. You probably all know this, but anyway, I have other little symbols. I sometimes do use the outer planets, Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. They do give important information. I won't teach that in the first block, but I will have a lesson on it in the second block. And then I have other things too. I have a lot of other fancy things in here that you don't need. And then there's a chart which is called the Navamsha chart, which represents more kind of your soul, your inner personality. And so in this case, my rising sign in the soul chart is Virgo rising. If the line here says Virgo rising, I have Mars in the first house. And this chart is, you can do, I've got a whole 6 lessons on this class in one of my advanced classes. There's so much you can do with the Navamsha chart. It reveals hidden talents. It reveals a lot of information about your spouse. It tells you more so when you get married, you often move to this chart, and this becomes more of you. By age 36 or 40 even, you're all becoming more of this chart than the chart you're born with. And then there are these, you know, you all know there are these dashas that you're born with, and we're not going to study dashas in this class, but I'm currently in a Rahu Mercury period and things like that. So that's how this chart looks. Now, if I change this chart to south, north, it didn't change. Okay, file. So hopefully it will change here. Actually, let me change it to north. Right here, I meant to set this up before I start class and missed it. Okay. Okay. So here's the northern style. We can add degrees and stuff like that. I'll just add degrees. But okay. Anyway. So here's the same chart of me in the northern style, and the northern style again. The numbers in the northern style are the numbers of the signs, so they're not the number of the houses. So the first thing you have to know about the northern style, 8 means Scorpio. It's the 8th natural sign of the zodiac. 9 means Sagittarius. 1 means Aries. So the zodiac is counted from 1 at Aries, 2 Taurus. Okay, these are basic things. And then, so in the northern style, it puts the first house in the top diamond. And so the first house is the top diamond, and then it moves counterclockwise through the zodiac. So this is the second house, Rahu in the second, Venus in the third, Mercury in the fourth, Sun in the fifth, Mars in the sixth, nothing in the seventh, Jupiter and Ketu in the eighth. Now, the reason some people like the northern style, and I just changed from it, is because there's certain houses that are considered important. So the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th houses, which govern self, home, relationship, and career, which everybody always wants to know, are the 4 center diamonds. And in the northern style, they come to the center focus. And then the trinal houses are considered very important, the first, fifth, and the 9th houses, and those become the kind of the center diamonds here. So some people like the northern style because they can quickly see what planets are in these main houses and what planets are in the trinal houses, and that's why this system is used. Now, I've recently switched for advanced reasons lately, but that's how that is. Anybody, this is a good time to take questions on these various things. Let me unmute you, and so your mics are free. If you click on the red mic, it should turn green and you can ask a question. Luke had a question. Yeah, Erica, you can get a free Vedic chart. A number of sites. Like I said, you can go to Jagannath Hora and run it there. There are a number of, if you probably do a web search and just say run a free Vedic chart for me, there are sites that run them. I've seen them. I don't know of any because I have my own software, but if you do a web search for run a free Vedic chart for me, you can, you'll find a number of places that do it. I don't know of any that I can recommend, but that's a good question. Anybody else? You all understand? Okay, so I just wanted you to know the difference between questions.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Ketu, and I have a kind of a general question. I was born at midnight. Which way do you go?
Okay, if you're born at midnight, you go forward.
Pardon?
Go forward. Err on the If you're born at midnight, exactly. If they put midnight on your birth certificate, we're going to assume if you're born on January 1st, 1955 or something, and it was midnight, we're going to assume it was January 1st and not December 31st. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Luke.
Okay, great.
I'm Luke's mommy.
Okay, good to have you here.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so I'm gonna okay, hold on. I just muted myself. I don't want to do that. So I'm muting you all again so that you don't bleed any noise into the mic, and we'll move on with our talk today. Okay, so the other thing you have to learn to run a chart is what's called the IANA. And it's the difference between the tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac. And every year there was known as the precession of the equinox. So that's why maybe 20,000 years ago the sun went into Aries on March 21st, and today the sun goes into Aries on April 13th, 14th. So it changes X number of minutes every year, and the computer programs kind of calculate it. And roughly it's off about, I forgot the exact calculation, I've gotten lazy with the computers, it's roughly off about 23, the difference between tropical and sidereal is about 23 degrees and 15 minutes. But there are different Ayanamshas, what are called, and the one that's used in India is called Lahiri Ayanamsha, and it's the standard one that India adopted, so everybody would be using the same one. My teacher, one of my teachers, Sanjay Roth, likes to use one that's called Chitrapaksha, which is a fancy name, and it's off about 1 minute from Lahiri. It's supposed to be a little bit more accurate. I mean, what happens is it just means that, like, if you're 2359, if your moon is at 2359 in Lahiri, maybe at 24 in Chitrapaksha. So when you pick settings, there are other settings when you run software. So there's a global thing called IANA, and there's actually a bunch of them listed. Some people use Fagan Bradley. The one that's standardly used when you study Vedic astrology is Lahiri. I'm using Chitrapaksha, but it's just a minute different. So I just wanted you to know that. Okay, so that's kind of technical stuff. I hardly won't do any more technical stuff in this lesson or the whole course, but those are basic things that you need to know if you're studying astrology. Again, so the rising sign changes every 2 hours, and the D9 chart, which is very important, changes about every 12 or 13 minutes. So you have to learn how to rectify charts to get the right rising sign of the D9 chart. Okay. So let's move a little bit into what I call the 7 castes and the 5 dharmas. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Without dharma, there's a series of random moments ungoverned by any sense of natural order. They're different. I don't want to get too technical here. I wanted to kind of let you know there's these kind of 4 elements in the chart. The earth element, which is connected to the material world, which is called, the path of life is called Artha. So the material world is connected to material signs like Virgo and Taurus and Capricorn, and their houses connected to it, also the 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th houses. And the water signs, which are Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, are connected to moksha, to teaching, to coaching, spiritual initiations, to finding enlightenment and meditation and things like that. They're connected to the natural 4th, 8th, and 12th houses. And then the fire signs, which govern which are the fire element Rajas, they're about protecting society. They're connected to Dharma, to the 1st, 5th, and the 9th house. And Dharma is about doing the right thing. And the air signs are connected, are about providing service and communicating. They're called Kama houses. We know the Kama Sutras, which are kind of like sexual, but Kama also, it's also on a deeper level, is about providing service and communicating. They're connected to the 3rd, 7th, and the 11th houses, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Now, Kama is not just sexual or romantic information. It's actually even kind of, it could be playing with the divineness and Lord Krishna, or going through an art museum. So it's not just about sexual or romantic encounters. It's about connecting and communicating. Moksha is not just about enlightenment. It's also about, sorry, this kind of came down here. Moksha is not just about enlightenment, but it's about education, knowledge, teaching, reading and writing. Professors at universities are kind of on that path. They're Brahmins. They're into teaching and knowledge, and they just want to spend all their time with the knowledge. And sometimes when the moksha houses are kind of distorted, when people haven't found their spiritual path yet, people will try to let go and transcend using alcohol or drugs, or maybe just sleeping a lot. They just that's a way of letting go, and that's a form of moksha. Moksha is about letting go. The ultimate form of enlightenment is letting go of ego to get enlightenment. And the Dharma houses are about kind of doing the right thing, about ethics, altruism, righteousness, obeying the law. People involved, policemen who are and soldiers, uphold society's laws and values, and judges. They're all very much talking about Dharma path, upholding society. And then Artha, which is not just about wealth, it's also about power, influence, fame, reputation, and position, connected to the merchant class. And it's traditionally was there to support the priest, to give wisdom and knowledge. It's often connected to the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses, which natural house of Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. So here's kind of this whole idea of the 4 aims of life: the water signs, the fire signs, the earth signs, and the air signs. Now, this is more complicated than you can imagine. I mean, mine's pretty simple. I am Scorpio rising. I am kind of a Brahmin. I am a teacher. I've always been in knowledge. I used to teach college. It's pretty clear in my chart, but sometimes you get these kind of mixed things, and then people aren't quite sure what they're supposed to do. And we're going to kind of learn that in my Saturday class on life purpose. Now, the other thing I want to point out before we move ahead with more knowledge here is that people get very caught up on their birth charts, and your birth chart is a chart of who you were when you came into this incarnation. Now, it does contain all the seeds for all the other charts that are created, but charts kind of rotate, and people get so caught up on their birth chart and who they were when they were born. By the time you're 40, I do readings for people in their 40s and their 50s. They'll talk about their patterns in their birth chart, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I used to do that, and then about 10 years ago, I realized that and I changed." So we're not always stuck with our birth chart as a line in stone. It is the chart that will help calculate all the other charts, but we're kind of multidimensional holograms. And even in my upcoming class, we're going to be looking at the moon chart, which is you can run a chart from the moon, and it tells you about your mental and emotional makeup. You can run a chart from the sun, which Western astrologers are fond of doing, and it's valid for telling us about finance and career and status, and it can't be ignored. And when people are trying to find what career they need to do, we often need to look at the sun chart, and so it is a valid chart. And the Navamsha chart, which I showed you, is a chart of our hidden soul qualities, and it's a very, very important chart, and it's we can't ignore it. And then there are all these charts that are come out of Gemini astrology that are about our soul purpose. If you read my columns, I've written about the Atmakarika, and there are charts that we draw up from the Atmakarika. And then there, you know, and our life changes. If we move to a different place, we actually have to run a different chart from where we were born, and our life may be very different in another place. And so they're astrolocality charts, and our karma can shift in another location. And then, you know, our natal chart is also not fixed because, you know, we change periods. So I was in a Mars period up until 2009, and I changed into a Rahu period in 2009. And what happens is you're supposed to, this is a little bit more advanced, but I'm just going to show it to you now. So you rotate the chart around the Dasha Lord. You know, so in my Mars period, which started in 2002, I really needed to kind of read this chart from Mars and Aries, and it was really true when I look at the chart from what's called the Dasha Lord. A lot of the things that were going on in my life could be read from this chart, from the fact that I was in a Mars period. Now I'm in a Rahu period, and so I actually have to read the chart from Sagittarius because the chart rotates. So I'm teaching you this at the beginning because people get so caught up on their natal chart, but we're so many charts, we're more like a hologram, and the charts rotate. We're not this kind of fixed entity like a line on stone. We're much more complex, and you eventually have to learn how to read all the different charts and integrate them. And what I tell people is, you know, Vedic astrology sometimes seems very complicated. I try to make it simple, and I'm really kind of clear and coherent when I teach. Sometimes it's easier to you know, you can study Vedic astrology for a lifetime, and I still study because it's encyclopedic. At the same time, so it's kind of like the Vedic astrology is like the ocean, and you know, you can't really, you know, survey the whole ocean and know the whole ocean, you know, but you can become the whole ocean. That's through consciousness. So through meditation, through spiritual practice, your consciousness develops as you study astrology, the planets start talking to you. I mean, I started looking at transits every day 35 years ago, and after a while, I just, you know, they kind of became my friends, and they would talk to me and they would tell me things in a sense. So you can kind of become the ocean easier than you can know the whole ocean, and that's ultimately what has to happen. But you still have to study Vedic astrology so that the planets will kind of start talking to you. The rising sign is more of your physical body, your personality. That represents the first house. It's very important. We'll talk about it in the class. But there's so many other charts, and you know, there are charts that reveal how people see us. There's a chart called the Arruda Chart. Arruda means kind of mirror, and it means how people see us. I'm just going to show you this just to give you some advanced knowledge here. But so my inside, I'm Scorpio rising, and my moon is weak, so it means, you know, I can be emotionally volatile at times, in feeling insecure. But the way people see me is Capricorn rising with Venus in the first, and people always come up to me and say how friendly you are. I'm a great business networker. This chart is very valid also. I'm really Capricorn with Venus in the first, and that people who know me as this very friendly, loving, warm person, and that's very true. That's how people see me. They don't see my inside, which may be more emotionally volatile. So how people see you and how you feel are different charts sometimes, and it's kind of important to know that. And sometimes people have. I had a colleague, and no one trusted him. He had like Rahu in the first house. Rahu kind of governs gangsters. Now he actually got a film part in Goodfellas for playing a gangster because he looked like a gangster and he felt like, and he had Rahu in the first house, and you know, and I didn't trust him because he had Rahu in the first house. So sometimes your life may be dependent on how people see you, and that's very dependent on what's called the Arruda chart or the mirror chart. So I'm just mentioning that. We're going to talk about that in my Saturday class, but I wanted to give you an overview so that from the very beginning you're learning that we shouldn't get tied down to the chart that we were born with. Okay, I don't want to go into this anymore. So one of the things that I want to do in this class is, class is going to be 15 weeks, and this is part 1. And I want to focus on learning kind of core archetypal values and learning new ways of making connections. So what that means is, Mars governs will and ego, and it governs service, and when it's on its highest level, it governs kind of violence and anger and force on its lowest level. But they're kind of all these planets and signs. Aries, is a very creative sign. Mars rules Aries. There's a connection between a house and a sign and a planet. Now, I'll give you an example in a minute. We'll go through the Sun and Leo. So Aries is the natural first sign of the zodiac. It's ruled by Mars, and the first house is very connected to kind of ego. And one of the core words that we always use for Aries is, ego. And when Aries gets out of balance, you put a bad planet in there, or Mars is afflicted, then Aries rising may have an imbalanced ego. So that's a very simplistic way of talking about those things. But I'm wanting to teach this material on a very kind of deep core archetypal level. So we're going to go very deeply into all the signs and the planets and the houses, kind of all connected to each other, so that we can see these connections. And when you look at charts, if you memorize a few key things, you can immediately start putting these key words together, so that you're kind of pulling up archetypal values. One of the things that happens with new astrologers is that you have to keep going to the books and saying, okay, Mars in Cancer in the 4th house or something. And we need to kind of learn it on the level of consciousness, because ultimately, there's just way too many combinations to ever remember. And then you get frustrated. So you have to kind of be able to learn these kind of core keywords, these archetypal values, and then you can kind of put them together yourself and actually say profound things. So that's my new approach to kind of teaching Vedic astrology in this class. And even people who know Vedic astrology will get something very deep out of it. We'll probably spend 5 or 6 weeks looking at these kind of sign, house, planet connections. And I'll give you an example of that. Now, just so you know, different signs of the zodiac have different qualities to them. If you've seen some of my articles on this on the web, like Scorpio, any place you have Scorpio, if you have any planets in Scorpio, it always tends to bring sufferings from past life. If you're Scorpio rising, maybe like I am, you have deep suffering from past life. If you just have one planet in Scorpio or something, maybe the signification of that planet is kind of spoiled from deep past life suffering. But then you have Aquarius rising, which is also a very karmic sign. It's connected to also deep suffering. It prevents manifestation of desires, and sometimes things are kind of taken away from you at the end. So it has kind of this poison chewing mind. It dwells too much on suffering. Aquarius is co-ruled by Saturn and Rahu, it's 2 malefic planets, and it tends to be kind of, so anytime you have planets in Scorpio, there's always some, in Aquarius, there's always some karmic problem with them. And that can be anywhere in the chart. It could be in your moon chart, in your sun chart, in your Navamsha chart. So we have to kind of learn these karmic signs. And then Leo rising and Aries rising always kind of create problems with ego and competition. They're fire signs. So they're more karmic signs. And then we have signs of the goddesses. So Pisces is connected to goddess Saraswati. It's always connected to Jupiter and spiritual learning and teaching. And, everybody loves Pisces, in the spiritual world, because it's a natural sign of meditation and moksha and deep spiritual knowledge. And anytime you have any planet in Pisces, you're just very interested in spiritual knowledge and wisdom. Libra is always connected. Libra and Taurus are connected to the other female goddesses. Libra is connected to Lakshmi, So it's a natural house that kind of brings wealth. And Taurus is connected to kind of Krishna, and is also connected to kind of is also one of the most wealthy signs of the zodiac. So anytime you have things connected to Taurus anywhere in the chart, it's always connected to money, and material wealth and abundance, and if they're good planets. Then the sign of Cancer is always connected to Parvati and Durga and the Divine Mother and the Nourisher. So we'll learn a language for all the signs, and we might do a little bit of that today. We'll see. This is I'll send you the slideshow. I don't know if I'm going to go through this. So we'll go into all the signs in detail, but this was my memorized kind of slides for the signs. So Aries is always connected to action, identification, ego, connected to performing action. Taurus is always connected to places where we gain wealth, social success, and prosperity. Gemini is always connected to creativity. Actually, if we aren't creative in Gemini, then we get stuck, and we get stuck in idleness. There, we ran into problems. Gemini is also a very kind of sexual sign too. Cancer shows us our best friend, a place where we care, those who can heal us. Leo shows what we know, naturally learn, read, or what we are superior in. Virgo shows where we need to be pure or better or improve. And Libra shows us, even though there's conflict in Libra, everybody thinks Libra is the harmony sign, but Libra is love kind of fighting, actually, because Aries owns the 7th house. But it's actually a very place of prosperity. It's very material. It's a sign of desire, and such. Scorpio, again, we said a sign of deep suffering, kind of sometimes long curses there. Sagittarius connected to the rules of society, to Dharma, to good luck. Capricorn to kind of, anytime you have anything in Capricorn, is connected to suffering, disappointment, hard work, and toil. And so Capricorn is a difficult sign to have any planets in, because it naturally brings in kind of hard work, and if you learn to work hard and be responsible, Capricorn, all these planets will reward you. Aquarius, who said, is a very sad place where it creates suffering, denied gains. Pisces, again, sign of great talents and knowledge. So this is just my quick, if you were doing flashcards, which I'll encourage you to do to learn things the first 3 or 4 weeks, if you memorize things quickly in Vedic astrology, then they just pop into your head. And that's one of the secrets I used to teach in my foundation classes. These are some of the keys for the signs. We'll go into more detail. Now, I wanted to show you an example of the integrative approach to kind of studying Vedic astrology that I'm teaching. And I'm going to use the Sun and Leo, the sign of Leo, and the 5th house. So Leo is the natural 5th sign of the zodiac, counted from Aries. So it naturally brings in kind of the natural 5th house energies, and I'll explain those in a minute. And then the Sun is the owner of Leo. So one of the things that we have to learn in Vedic astrology right from the beginning is that each sign of the zodiac is connected to a planet. And I didn't put those in here, but that's certainly one of the first things we'll do in our first class. But so, for example, Aries and Scorpio are connected to Mars, and then Scorpio is also connected to Ketu, but that's advanced knowledge. Taurus and Libra are connected to Venus, and Gemini and Virgo are connected to Mercury, and Cancer is connected to the Moon, and Leo is connected to the Sun, and Capricorn and Aquarius are connected to Saturn, and then Pisces and Sagittarius are connected to Jupiter. So the first thing you have to learn, the most important thing you learn in beginning astrology, is you have to memorize this, because you have to immediately know who the owner is of a sign. So you can, on the southern style chart, you can kind of see this real quickly because the corners, so the two corners, Sagittarius and Pisces, are ruled by Jupiter. So it's easy to remember. The other two corners, which are dual signs, are Gemini and Virgo, and they're connected to Mercury. So the corners are easy to remember. And then Taurus and Libra, they're kind of in the southern sign, they're right below each other. They're both Venus signs. The Mars signs, Aries and Scorpio, are also right underneath each other. So right away you see that. And then Saturn signs are right next to each other, Capricorn and Aquarius, and the Sun and the Moon are across the way. So you can quickly, in the southern style, easier than the northern style, you can kind of quickly remember where things are and who owns them because there's these connections. Mars is, and I just showed you that. So that's kind of fun. That's one of the basic things. So anyway, the Sun is connected to Leo. So let's look at the Sun. So the Sun is about ego and expression of our true self. It's establishing our individuality of who we are. And all of us need to be valued. The Sun, everybody wants to be recognized, to be famous, not to be famous, but to be acknowledged for what they do. People want to be valued. So the Sun is about, and Leo is all about feeling valued. But the Achilles heel for the Sun is self-pride. Sometimes people, if the Sun is weak and people don't have self-esteem, they may actually project a false ego and be too boastful, and they're overplaying that ego and it gets out of balance. When the Sun is happy, though, it's joyful and it's enthusiastic. We often like Leo rising or Leo Sun people because they're just kind of filled with joy and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is a key word for the Sun too, when the Sun is strong. Sun in Pisces, wherever the Sun goes will show how we express our self-worth and recognition. I've got Sun in Pisces, so I express my self-worth and recognition through teaching and spiritual teaching. I have Sun aspecting Virgo, so I've always been involved in service and health, which is what Virgo is connected to. So you can just even look and see where the Sun is, and it can tell you something about how you express your self-worth and recognition. Now, Leos in particular need to shine more and be recognized by others, and that's what they really want. Now, if the Sun is really balanced, it doesn't really need any recognition. It knows its worth and it doesn't need other people to praise it. But usually the Sun's going to be out of balance some ways. The problem in Vedic astrology, there's always something that isn't afflicted in some way. So there's always some flaw, and we incarnate on the planet to kind of cure these flaws. Anyway, the Sun, Leos like to shine and be recognized by others. When Leo's out of balance and when the Sun's out of balance, there's conceit and self-esteem is out of balance. Now, the Sun is not happy in Libra. It's considered debilitated. I don't like to use the word debilitated in my classes. It means that it has its lowest, darkest value. And when the Sun's weak, it has problems with self-esteem and self-confidence. So if you have Sun in Libra and you were born between October 17th and November 16th, you may struggle with that energy more, and sometimes it's hidden and you may not even notice it. But that's what happens when the Sun is weak. The fifth house, which is the natural fifth sign of the zodiac, is about self-expression. It's about the ability to receive applause. And, the fifth house is connected to acting and the performing arts, to romance, to children. It's about self-expression. Children are an expression of ourselves. If you meet people, they always talk about their children. They're an expression of themselves. Look what my son did, So Leo is always about, recognition, self-applause, self-esteem, acting, performing out. So you often find we gravitate towards the stars of Hollywood, and they often, have a strong Leo component in their charts because, they shine, and we're drawn to Leos because they're the kings. They shine. They're the stars of our life. Leos often become athletes. They like to receive recognition. a medal, an award, the highest batting average score, or whatever. Fifth house is also connected to romance. Love affairs bring recognition and flattery from partners. Children, again, are a way of leaving the stamp of the world. So the fifth house is the natural fifth house of the zodiac. Leo is the natural, is connected to the sun. And it's about this archetype of shining, self-ignition, expressing ourselves, self-expression, and receiving recognition. So if you remember all these things together, fifth house, Leo, sun, they archetypally all go together. They all connect. Now the Achilles heel problem with Leo is opposite of Aquarius, and whenever there's an opposite sign across the way, it has an inherent conflict. And so Leo is about the self, about self-recognition. I want the promotion. I want to be honored at the awards dinner. Aquarius is about doing humanitarian efforts for society, for sacrificing, and that's really the bright side of Aquarius. And there's always a conflict between wanting to do stuff for yourself, which means you don't have time to help society, or when you do stuff for society, sometimes you don't get recognized and your self-esteem goes down, and it's selfless service. So there's a kind of inherent conflict between Leo and Aquarius. We'll learn all of those. The Achilles heel with Leos is they have problem with the air element. It's called Vayu. And I don't like to use too much Sanskrit. I happen to have it here, but Leo is kind of bitter enemies. Leo and the Sun are bitter enemies with Saturn and Rahu. Rahu is our desire nature. Everybody knows a little bit about Saturn, which tends to cause suffering, but we'll learn a lot more about Saturn. And so Saturn is often the archetype of the servant, and it's called the Shudra in Vedic astrology. Saturn governs the Shudra class, and those are people who serve society. And the king, who is the archetype for Leo, needs to kind of learn to be successful with his servants. And so when you get these Sun-Saturn conflicts in people's charts, bosses have problems with employees have problems with bosses. This is kind of an innate conflict between wanting to shine and being the boss and being the leader, and everybody wanting to take down the leader. In our society today, Trump is a Leo rising, and everybody wants to take him down. It's just part of the archetype of the king. You want to take down the king. He shines too much. Trump's sun is out of balance in many ways. That's why people want to take him down. But it's just part. It's part of the archetype. It's just people are always trying to take down the king. Saturn often rules government too, so you can just see how the government, Saturn, people are just trying to kind of take down the king. It's just kind of this innate archetypal battle. The sun rules health and longevity, and it can be an issue if Saturn and Rahu are not well placed in the chart. So if you afflict the sun in the first house, now every planet has a light and a dark situation. So different signs, the sun will not be happy in Aquarius, which is opposite of Leo. It will not be happy in Capricorn, which is owned by Saturn. It will not be happy in Libra, where it has this low self-esteem energy and it gets caught up in sexual intrigue. It's not going to like Taurus very well either. So if the sun is afflicted in a particular sign, and that happens to be the first house, then it can create vanity, arrogance, boasting, condescension, domineering qualities, having problems with co-workers, power hunger. So there's always a light and a dark side in Vedic astrology. You can have an exalted sun. You can't, you never can say exalted planets are always good. Hitler had an exalted sun. People were drawn to him, but it was afflicted by 3 other planets. And so, it was really out of balance, and he really destroyed millions of people because his sun was so out of balance. Sometimes you get people with out of balance suns, and you can't stand to be around them because they're always telling you how great they are and what they did. Their sun isn't out of balance. A really balanced sun, is a good leader. He works in the trenches with people. he doesn't need to be praised really, although the sun always likes to be praised. Leo always likes to be praised. But you have to kind of let go of, the sun ultimately has to kind of learn to kind of just be of service to people, and work with people. The sun gets out of balance real easily. It needs the water element. It's fire. It's a fire planet, right? Everybody knows Leo's a fire planet. The sun's fire, obviously. It needs the water element to cool it down. So it needs swimming. If Leos do intense aerobic exercise and they get way out of balance, you have to send Leos to the pool, and they naturally want to go there. People usually know what's good for them, but sometimes people don't, and if their planets are out of balance. Part of what I'm going to do in the class is bring in some what's called esoteric astrology, because there's kind of a deep mythical and spiritual, archetypal, mythological level to all these planets through the Vedic mythology also. The sun is the means by which the spirit expresses itself. Spirituality expresses through religion, philanthropic, and righteous deeds. The sun's called Loka Chakshu, the eye of the world. Nothing escapes the sun's gaze, right? The sun's the heart of the world. It's the heart. It represents the heart. It's the Atma, the self of the universe, but it's also this destroyer of life when time comes, and the sun is sometimes thought to be a mild malefic because, it's hot. You live in the desert. I lived in Phoenix, Sedona for a number of years. You don't go out in the sun. It's pretty brutal, And yet without the sun, the sun's the life giver of all food, and without the sun, we would die. So it has this kind of dual qualities. The sun represents the total quantum of divine energy flowing through the individual and the quality of its manifestation. So one of the things that we forget about the sun is it does represent our divinity. It does represent our highest nature of our soul, and it's beyond the boastful ego small soul that wants to be recognized. It ultimately has to discover its divine nature. And Leos are often kind of tossed between some material desire to be recognized and be famous and make a lot of money, and deeply wanting to kind of find their spiritual essence. Key language words that we need to learn for the sun. See, sometimes you just have to kind of put words on flashcards so that you can quickly come up with a key word that will be appropriate when you're looking at something. So key words for the sun: bright, vivid, transparent, generous, dignified, commanding, to show and make evident, looking, sight, power, vision, visibility, and appearance, to show oneself, insight, discovery, surveying, speculation, truth. There's kind of come up with a bunch of core words for you to learn. The sun is connected to the brain, to the eyes, to the heart, to the soul, to the creator, and so it's important to kind of develop this vocabulary of kind of key words, and then it helps you when you have to pull a keyword of using. Sun occupations: military leaders, directors, CEOs, doctors, politicians, scientists, public entertainers, and movie stars, dictators, when the sun's in balance, fathers, surgeons, doctors, managers, and administrators. So, what to look at. Okay. I did the moon also, and I don't want to blow you away with too much information. I just wanted to give you kind of a glimpse of how we can kind of pull together some of these kind of archetypal values. I want to kind of open up the mic for questions now. And I need to stop lecturing and rest my voice for a little bit. So okay, sorry. I've just unmuted all of you, so if you press on your orange mic, it should turn green and you should be able to speak. Okay. I guess I'll do the moon, which, you know, obviously the two core planets. Okay, so the sun and the moon are obviously the two most important planets in any chart. They represent the king and the queen of the chart, and obviously the male side and the female side. But it's the king and the queen, and the moon it represents the mind, the mind residing between the soul and matter. It receives the impressions of the material world, and so mind and emotions are obviously connected to the moon. In the Vedic astrology, they almost pay more attention to the moon than the sun. There's a big difference between Western and Vedic astrologers because what happens in our mind and our emotions really impacts us so much more than, you know, how people see us sometimes. The desire to, the moon's connected with, you know, and the sign of Cancer is connected to the desire to feel secure, safe, serene, and protective. So Cancer is connected to the home. You know, we go to our home, it's a place where we're protected, where we feel safe. You know, people are obsessed with homes. It's not just about living in a safe neighborhood, because the home, you know, the moon and the sign of Cancer and the fourth house are all connected to that sense of being protected and safe. And when we're young, our sense of safety comes from our mother holding us and nurturing us, and that develops an early sense of safety and protection. Now, the mind, the moon is very connected to the mind, and so we have to kind of in the emotions, and so when just about, I would say about 80% of the charts that I look at, the moon is afflicted in some way, and that's because we incarnate here to work on things. The mind is handled through meditation. So usually I always recommend that people pick up meditation when their moon is afflicted, because, you know, if you do meditation, the mind gets kind of stabilized and the emotions get more stabilized. And before that, once in a while I get a chart with a really strong moon that's unafflicted. I can barely think of one, because, you know, there's always some affliction. The moon's always kind of has a problem. We'll look at some moon associations in a little bit. The moon is very nurturing, so it has this intense, in the sign of Cancer and the natural fourth house of Mother. They're all connected to the need to fulfill our emotional needs, the need to nurture. You put moon in the first house. I have moon in the first house. Person is going to have a need to kind of nurture others. I do that. And it actually takes care of my own need to be nurtured. I wasn't nurtured enough. I nurture others. It kind of takes care of that need and affliction in my chart. And obviously the fourth house and the moon and sign of Cancer are very connected to the emotional care from the mother to the child, and it creates our emotional state in the adulthood. And without obsessing on myself here, for some reason my mom, when I was growing up in the 50s, kept me in the crib a lot and didn't hold me enough. And if anybody who studies child psychology knows, that's kind of very damaging. It creates a very strong sense of insecurity. And we see my moon's weak in my chart. It's my weakest planet, and I'm still kind of dealing with the implication of that. And I'm always doing healing work on it, but there's still the sense of not being taken care of. Moon is a very sensitive planet. It's the planet of sensitivity. This is a repeat of the previous slide. Okay. The moon on an esoteric level is the cosmic reflector that allows us to experience the glory of the soul through the mind. So it represents Mother Divine, the protector. It represents why we're here. The emotional upheaval spurs us to understand our mission on the planet. So this is kind of important. Most of the time I see people with afflicted moons in their charts. There's some affliction. It's being aspected by Saturn or Mars or Rahu or Ketu, or not in a good sign, or there's something going on with it. And because it actually, when we're emotionally unsettled, we tend to seek God most. We tend to turn towards spirituality, and that's why the moon's so important in Vedic astrology. I see so many afflicted moons in birth charts, because when the moon's afflicted, we're drawn to get on the spiritual path, and that's part of the soul's mission. So that's why it's the deeper esoteric level of the moon. It's it provides this deep thinking, emotional upsurge, and intellectual growth to send us on the soul on its mission for self-discovery. It goes back to the central core of astrology. Why are we here on the planet? Why am I suffering? Usually we suffer most because of the moon, because our mind is filled with thoughts we don't like, our emotions are unraveled. And if people often don't know what to do if they're not lucky and on a spiritual path, they go to drugs and alcohol and other numbing substances. If you're lucky and you have good spiritual genes in your chart, then you're drawn to meditation and yoga and breath work and studying spiritual knowledge, and it helps you overcome this kind of core level affliction of the moon. So Cancers always have an interest in family. The fourth house is the house of home, and it's also a marriage house. We get married, we create a home, we create a family. So the fourth house, the sign of Cancer, people with planets, with a lot of planets in Cancer, they're always interested in family and ancestral heritage, in nurturing and helping others. And they're very attuned to the emotions of others also. It's a place of comfort, of emotional need and ability to nurture others. Cancer is always opposed to Capricorn. Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac. The 10th house is often connected to work and status. Capricorns are actually good business people. They have a very strong business sign. There's a natural archetypal conflict between home and work. Home is, and this has certainly changed in our world. I mean, there was a time when mom was home and she fed you, and dad came home from work and brought the money and supported mom. And in modern society, things have changed. We have two working parents now to support people's lifestyle, and it's very expensive. Kids, so the woman is moving out of the fourth house into the 10th house of the workplace, and sometimes men aren't moving into their Dharma, and I have friends who have become moms because their wife is good at work and they're not, and there's nothing wrong with any of these, but there's this innate conflict between home and work, with wanting to be home and safe and nurtured and being out in the world. Recently, I always did better having an office and getting out of my house and working in a physical office. And about 6 years ago, my wife needed me at home because of some physical needs, and I moved home and I started working out from home. And it was like I wasn't seen as much in my business, and my business didn't do as well. And I actually felt kind of stuck working at home. And I finally just, I understood this archetypal conflict. I finally, pushed myself out of the house and got into an office, and things have gotten better because, men need to get out of the house. Women sometimes like working at home, and there's no sexism involved in that at all. But it's part of this archetypal value, and sometimes it gets mixed up, and it creates kind of a conflict. And this is a natural conflict between Cancer, Capricorn, 4th and 10th house, home and work. Key core words connected to the moon: rejoicing, delighting, amusement, putting in good humor, pleasure, joy, entertaining, charm, attraction, bliss, devotion, adoration, maternal, blushing with joy, imagination. Moon's a very kind of imaginative planet. Intention, inclination, ideas, heart-centered. The moon is very connected to the heart. Mother, we always talk about the heart of the mother. Cancer, the 4th house. Moon, mother. All those values are very heart-centered, and I have moon in the 1st house. It actually makes me a very kind of compassionate, heart-centered individual. And it's a blessing of having moon in the first house for me, even though it's afflicted. The places up for the moon, obviously mother, love, wife, fiancés, medicinal herbs. Herbs are connected to the moon. Mirrors, ice, sailors, the moon is always kind of a watery kind of sign. Bathing places, going to the beach. Refreshment bars, dairies, milk is connected to the moon. Hospitals, which are places where nurses are found who nurture us back to health. Nurseries, where children are often connected to the moon, early childhood education. Nursery is kind of a moony thing. Watery fruits, waterworks, plumbers, connected to the moon. Honeymoons, peace is a place of the moon also. Wanting to find inner peace, so we turn to meditation. Moon associations, we'll learn more of this too, is that usually the moon is connected to some planet or some sign, and this comes up a lot. It's worth kind of learning these. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm actually getting a little talked out at the moment. I don't want to go overboard, but there's a lot of, I'll send you the slideshow, you can read about it. And then I have all the other planets too. But so one approach to what I'm hoping to do with this class is to really kind of teach these kind of core archetypal values for signs and planets. And then I didn't show you aspects, but when you have a planetary aspect, it means something. It's not just, if we say I have Mars aspecting my moon, it actually, Mars likes to fight. It likes to stand up for its territory. It likes to defend its territory. So you have Mars aspecting the moon. It means Mars might want to fight with mother figures or the mother or something like that. So we'll learn about planetary aspects. They mean more than just an aspect. It means there's some energy that goes with that aspect. Venus represents love. Wherever Venus aspects in our chart, it represents what we love. Saturn creates suffering wherever it aspects, so it's all these aspects in a chart, which are glances that we'll learn about, have meaning. Let me show you again an outline of the class. And I will, while I'm finding that, I will, sometimes people get on these calls and they ask me about their chart, and it's hard for me to answer those kind of questions because I don't have the full chart in front of you, and I often will spend 2 hours preparing for a consultation. You can always sign up for a reading if you like what I'm doing, but so I'm definitely answering, open to all questions, but please don't ask me about your chart because I can't see the whole thing. The first 5 or 6 weeks of the course, and the course starts on the course will be on a Sunday afternoon, probably at 3 o'clock. I usually, sometimes if I have international students, I will move the class up in time. I sometimes can do it earlier. Sometimes I lead a meditation on Sunday mornings, or I go to church on Sunday mornings, but I always do the class usually after 12. Sometimes I can move it up if I get a lot of international students. But the class will be starting on Sunday, September 8th. That's not, it's the 8th. And it runs through December 22nd. It's 15 weeks. I've added an extra week in the class. And the first 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to talk about, go deeply into the planets, the signs, and the houses, and how they're all connected, and start learning these kind of archetypal values. And then we're going to move into more specific things, looking at the types of houses, learning principles of judgment, learning how to judge houses to see if they're strong or not, looking at the planetary aspects, looking at oddball relationships like retrograde planets too close to the sun, learning the Navamsha chart, which usually is not taught in the first block, but I think it's so important. I want you to really get it right from the beginning. Looking how the elements influence our life. Fire and water don't mix, obviously, and so there's sometimes there are planetary connections that get all mixed up because you just put you put the sun in Cancer. It's in a water sign. It's 12 houses from Leo. It's not really happy there. and you know, you have to kind of learn to understand all this on a deeper level. And then I am planning a part 2 in January, which will go into dashas and transits, yogas, Rahu and Ketu, and remedies, nakshatras, and introduction to Varga. So what I decided to do in part 2 is that I have detailed classes on all of these things that are in my part 2, but I'm going to give you like 2 or 3 lessons on them. And then if you want to study, when you want to study them more and deeply, you can take the full section. As I said, I have a whole curriculum developed on dashas and transits, on money karma, on houses, on relationship, on remedies and things like that. So I haven't had a core 30-week class for people to study who need to study from the beginning. So for those of you who want to start from the beginning, you can start with me on September 8th. For those of you who are seasoned astrologers and want to go deeper, you will learn something in this course, because if you study with me, you know I go deeply into things, and I'm trying to teach this on a very deep level. The early bird for the course is $325. I will take payment plans if you don't have credit cards that will give you an automatic payment plan. I don't earn a living teaching my classes, doing my readings. I also have a financial business. I have a passion for teaching astrology. You know, I just have to do it, and that's why I'm teaching these classes. And I hope you'll join me. So I'm going to open it up to questions. I will send you a copy of the videotape and the PowerPoint to review. And the mics are open now for any questions you might have about anything. Again, if you choose not to take my classes, you can certainly enjoy my books. They're available online and on Amazon. If you want a PDF version, it's a little bit cheaper. I have a lot of deep knowledge in all my books. And you take my classes, I will give you my books, because I often like to give you readings. Then you have something in writing to read before class, and I don't have to repeat what's in my book. So I will give you my books if you take the class. So I've been talking way too much. Let me hear from you. Did you enjoy the talk today? Do you have any questions? Shauna has a question. Okay, Shauna asked that exact degrees mean something. You can talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, Vedic astrology is like strands of DNA, and there's a chart called the D60 chart, and it's used to differentiate twins. And so every half degree of the zodiac has a different deity connected to it and a different kind of spiritual lesson to it. And so even every degree actually will tell you something about a person. And we study that in some of my more advanced classes, but Shauna, that's a good question. And Jean had a question. Okay, so yeah, there is a natural rhythm between the opposite signs. I have an article about that in my book, and we'll go over it again. To me, it's kind of fascinating. I mean, the nature of life is filled with opposites, and most of the conflicts in our life are learning to integrate, you know, life. You know, do I stay home or do I go to work? Do I take care of my kid, or do I, you know, gain some status and be appreciated at the office? I mean, I just was working on that one with a client this week. And it's the nature, you know, these opposites are always part of our life, and they're innate in the chart, and you can see the conflicts, and then learning to resolve them is also a trick, easy thing to do. Erica had a question about Saturn, why Saturn periods last so long. Saturn isn't a bad period for everybody. I mean, you can actually have a wonderful Saturn period if you're Taurus or Libra rising, or Capricorn or Aquarius rising. There's a whole science on how these periods go so many years, and why we incarnate for so many years of a certain planet. If you have a Saturn period that's not good for you early in your life, it may be that you need to discover issues around responsibility, about working hard, about finding meditation. Sometimes Saturn will create suffering so that we move toward meditation. I find I live in a community where people have a lot of Saturn energy, and I have a lot of Saturn energy, and if I didn't, it wouldn't propel me to find spirituality. Saturn's one of the most spiritual planets out there, actually, and it brings deep spirituality. We have to discover the gift of every planet and the gift of every period. There's always a bright side, as I said at the beginning of the class, to everything, and we have to learn how to translate that. Good question, Erica. Okay, I'm still here for questions. I will stay on a few more minutes. The class is starting in, it's actually starting 2 weeks from tomorrow on September the 8th. It will be a Sunday class. If I get a lot of, at the moment it's scheduled for 3 to 5 Central Time. I get a lot of international students like from Australia or places that, you know, are sleeping. I sometimes will move the class up, but that usually works for my schedule. Again, there isn't, if you need some help with, if you'd like to take the course and you have some special needs, please email me. I can make some special arrangements for you. Again, I don't make a living teaching these classes. I do put an incredible amount of work into them. Anybody who's taken my classes knows that. Laura, I just saw that you joined here. Can you share something about your experience with my classes?
Oh, I love your classes. They're helping me integrate so much, and just because they just keep going into more and more depth, and my consciousness is just starting to really attune to all the grace and the problems, and it's just it's helping me. You're helping me just integrate a whole bunch of stuff that I've been exposed to in the last 6 years of studying. And I feel like even the beginning classes would be really helpful for me if I wanted it, if I choose to do it. I'm not sure I can swing it.
Okay, well,
I am looking at doing a retreat, and I'd love to know more about that retreat you're doing in October.
Yeah, I actually just mentioned that I've moved the retreat to May because what's happened is that there's so many things going on in people's lives that, you know, including mine, you know, my dad's having another bout of deep senility, that I've just moved the retreat to May. I don't have a date yet, but I will share about the retreat. The retreat's gonna be really exciting. It's about spirituality and astrology, and really, one of the things that people think astrology is fortune telling, but, you know, really spirituality, I mean, astrology is really about how we can break the binds of the mind, so that we can get enlightened. And a good astrologer should help you see your Maya, see all your illusions, your blind spots, which is what my book is about, so that you can, you know, transcend and become bigger who you are, your divine self. Thank you for sharing, Laura. Anybody else want to say anything? So I will send you, I'll go to webinar, will automatically send you a copy of the tape if you want to rewatch it. I will get around to probably tomorrow to sending you a PowerPoint presentation if you want to read through the notes. And I look forward to having you in my classes, and please email me with any questions or needs. And I look forward, you know, my life is all about service, and my teaching is all about service. So I really hope that I can help you. And with that, we will close. Jay Gurdett, have a great Saturday, everybody.
Thank you.